Andy Mitten is with us, editor of United We Stand. How you doing, Andy?
Hello.
Oh, it's not that bad, is it?
Whoa. Not our fault.
Yes.
I'm fine.
So, how are Manchester United fans doing, Andy?
Ask them in October. I think there's been a lot of positives on the pre-season. I've been on the tour. I've been in Australia, in Norway, in Singapore. They've triumphed in every game. The youngsters have played well. The players are fitter. The attitude seems much better. And if that pays off, then fantastic. But excuse me if there's a little bit of scepticism around, because you could argue the squad is weaker going into this season than it was at the end of last season, a season which finished atrociously for Manchester United. I would love the young lads to come through and to perform well. And if the team are going to build the squad the way that Solskjaer wants to do it, with these fast attacking young players who he feels should be Manchester United players, who he can coach, who can be improved, then I think that's great, because it's not worked in the last 6 years. Manchester United not only have tried different managers, but they've tried different approaches in the transfer window. And the transfers which get the biggest traction on social media may have attracted the commercial people at the club, but it just haven't worked where it matters most on the pitch. And I'm talking about big names like Bastian Schweinsteiger, Radamel Falcao, Angel Di Maria, and Alexis Sanchez, who's the biggest flop of all. So if Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Dan James and Harry Maguire are going to come good, then great, I welcome that. But there was a huge gap last season between Manchester United and Manchester City and Liverpool. I think this season, realistically, United should be trying to get into the top four, closing the gap. But more than that, show more signs that the team are getting back somehow to a style of play which has changed and shifted with the different managers, and a philosophy that says we are Manchester United.
Miguel Delaney was on with us a little bit earlier, Andy, talking about Manchester United's targets over the course of the summer, from somebody like Declan Rice early on through to Dybala over the last week or so, and that a lot of those players looked at Manchester United and thought, no, they're not playing Champions League football, and they may not be playing Champions League football for the next couple of seasons, and that it was not a club that they or their agents wanted them to be at. When you look at the lack of players who've come in, and if they are weaker now than they were at the end of last season, like, how much of it is down to Ed Woodward being unable to convince those players to join the club, and how much of it is just him actually not being a great negotiator and somehow, or maybe not having the financial clout to throw enough money at them to convince them to join the club?
They've spent a lot of money, and I can see the club's perspective when Dybala, for example, says that he wants 10 million net and that his agent wants 15 million, and actually there's further complications with image rights. Manchester United being seen as a soft touch financially has not worked, and players from Andres Iniesta to Sergio Ramos have used Manchester United as a suitor in their own transfer negotiations, and I'm not comfortable with that. Ed Woodward clearly is under scrutiny, and if the season starts badly, he will be under even more, and he'll be quite rightly criticised, because he said that the club will appoint a director of football. It hasn't happened. It's legitimate to ask, why is this not happening? And legitimate to ask searching questions when Manchester United, the biggest team in England, are sixth in the table, miles off the pace. I'd love Solskjaer to work out. He will get support. He's seen as a club legend. There are questions about his body of work, about his inexperience. The first 10 weeks under him were fantastic. The next 10 weeks were absolutely disastrous, and people will be quick to judge. It's okay him building for the long term. He needs to get results in the short term, because if United were to lose the first two games, then it would just kick off again. And not just online, because what's happened over the summer is it's kicked off online among fans. But at the games, the fans have tended to be more patient. There hasn't really been massive dissent. You've seen like odd people having a go at players like Paul Pogba in the last game of the season. But it would really start to turn at matches if the team was seen to be failing 8 or 10 games into the season.
There is the other backdrop, the bigger picture, and that's the Glazers. You know, the reason Ed Woodward is still in the job is largely down to his very good relationship with the Glazers, and he was the man who brought the move about back in 2005. Now it feels like a long time ago. So Nathan was remarking upon the fact that VAR at Old Trafford won't be available. There won't be a screen available for the fans to know what's going on. Anfield is the only other stadium where that's the case. Now, Anfield's had a bit of a redevelopment and Liverpool are going well, but to focus in on just what has gone on there, like over $1 billion has come out of the club. Woodward's been put in situ and has not done a very good job, is the blunt truth. Over $1 billion. And the whole thing is just sort of stagnated. Like the relationship between the fans and the Glazers is a pretty toxic one. Do you envisage that bubbling over at any stage this season, Andy? Like we talk about Ed Woodward so much. I'd say it's kind of a convenient thing for the Glazers in some respects, when actually the big picture is that they have taken £1 billion sterling out of the club. They have it was a leveraged buyout. Everything about the buyout was wrong. Ferguson kind of covered over a multitude of cracks initially, but that issue is coming home to roost now in a big way, surely.
That takeover should never have been allowed to happen. I don't know one Manchester United fan who thought it was a good idea, who thinks that the Glazers are good owners. I think it will come home if the season starts badly. Ed Woodward will get severely criticised. That said, they've spent a lot of money. They've just spent it terribly. They've spent huge amounts of money.
But sorry to interrupt. They should have a new stadium. Like $1 billion has come out of the club. Like in many respects, it has stopped being a leading Premier League club. Like look at the stadium. Even Manchester United fans will look at that and say, "This isn't right. What's going on here?"
I've written about that stadium more than any other journalist. I've said that stadium is fraying around the edges. I've written about it a dozen times in the last year. When I spoke to someone at the club towards the end of last season, I said to them, "I bet you weren't delighted when I'm writing pieces like that." And they actually said, "Well, it means we can go to the Glazers and say, this is what someone with credibility is writing."
Yeah.
I'm a stadium geek. I'm an attendance geek. I could talk to you about stadiums in Dublin if you really wanted me to. And Old Trafford was expanded and developed continuously from 1965, when Manchester City's ground was actually the best ground in Manchester. Right the way through, it followed a plan, and then almost nothing has been done in the last 9 or 10 years. There's been piecemeal developments to it, but I travel the world as a journalist. I went to 85 games last season, and Old Trafford has been left behind in so many ways. And the point you made about the video screen is one of them. And I wrote the last big piece on the stadium comparing it to Tottenham's new ground. Old Trafford's fallen behind, and it shouldn't have done. It's full to 76,000 capacity every single week. United have got the biggest support in the world. I was in Singapore 2 weeks ago, and 95% of the ground in a 53,000 crowd were Manchester United fans. And even me, who's seen them play in 44 countries, was staggered because they were playing Inter Milan. Inter Milan are not a village team. It's Inter Milan. And Manchester United were sixth in the league last year. Should it be a new stadium? No, I don't agree with you there. I think Old Trafford should be redeveloped. I think the main stand, the south stand, should be built upon. I think the capacity should be increased. There's a demand there for it. And if you go to Old Trafford now, it's fraying. It needs a lick of paint. It's ridiculous that a club as big and as financially successful as Manchester United have got to deal with an issue as minor as peeling paintwork. Now, since I've been writing this, there's been a few piecemeal improvements, and there are a few more plans, but the thrust of your point is right. There wasn't Wi-Fi in the press box at Old Trafford until 2018. I mean, this is ridiculous. and it's only when we're writing about these things that they get done. And I'll write it again, because Old Trafford for so long has been the best stadium in England, and now it's not.
Is there any possibility, Andy, that things could get worse for Manchester United before the summer is over, that maybe, just maybe, there's been a devious plan hatched by Paul Pogba and Mino Raiola, that they'll keep quiet for the last couple of weeks, but now that this window is done and Manchester United can't invest, that Real Madrid comes cropping up yet again and he throws his toys out of the pram and tries to force something through over the next few weeks?
Well, things would definitely get worse if that happens. Paul Pogba, for all his pros and cons that are around him, is a fantastic footballer, and if he were to leave, it would leave Manchester United midfield. In my opinion, and I'm not a professional football manager, but I speak to people every day in professional football, including people at Manchester United, it'd leave that midfield badly exposed. You saw that at Cardiff last week. Nemanja Matic, just spoke to him a couple of days earlier. Good guy, decent career. Would I fancy him up against the best teams this season? Not as much as I would have done 2 years ago. So that would be a really bad scenario. If Pogba starts pushing and going on strike, I'd be surprised if he did. I wouldn't be stunned. But what would happen with Manchester United? If the season starts badly, then it will really kick off. Or, best case scenario, and I've never gone into a season so uncertain as what to expect. If these young lads start playing well and continue winning, because they have been winning pre-season, and again, it's only pre-season, then this summer of mild discontent will be forgotten about.
Andy, thanks as ever.
Take care now.